Today we're going to be running our first installation of new OLLI board members and the long-term plan review virtually. So bear with us as we go through this today. Okay, so this is the agenda that we're going to run through today. We'll have a welcome. Chris Ward is joining us in a few minutes. And then I'll be awarding the certificates of appreciation for those board members that are leaving the board or leaving their offices. And then Jim Monroe will install the new board members. He's our OLLI immediate past president. And then we'll entertain a motion that Mike will make to approve the appointment of Bill Sampson as an OLLI trustee at large. Mike will then continue and he'll review the status of our long-term plan, of which he is one of the major authors and he chaired that committee. And I'll follow up with an update on the status of where we are with some of these plans that we had started back in July of this past year. Then we'll end up with questions, hopefully some answers, any comments. And I already know that Ellie said she would like to make some comments on her part, and then we'll adjourn. And the rest of the board, I'd like you to be able to come back in again. I'm going to stop this meeting, stop the recording, and then we'll join again the same meeting to entertain a motion that will be put out by Janice Jang.
Wanted to thank you for the opportunity just to join you briefly this morning, and thank you for all your support and the work that you've done to contribute not only to OLLI's 40th in these interesting times, and I'll put air quotes around interesting. You can infer from that what you will. And particularly to speak to the outgoing board members first, because I know this has been a difficult transition. Believe me, we are all facing that right now as we had to shift gears and put all of our courses across campus, including an extension online on very short notice. And I think people in leadership positions, volunteer or otherwise, are put in very difficult situations when confronted with crises like this, and your ability to manage this and help OLLI move forward is exemplary. And I think you should be applauded and supported for all that you've done and celebrate what you've been able to accomplish. And I think the same holds for the incoming board members who are confronted with, okay, now we're here, what do we do as we continue to navigate through these uncharted waters, if you will, and keep the ship afloat and figure out the next port of call as you embark on what the next 40 years for OLLI means. And I think from our perspective, an extension in international programs, of which you're an integral part, this is really an opportunity, not a barrier. I'm not going to quote Marcus Aurelius here, but I have a little phrase of his in mind as I'm thinking about that, where I think obstacles are in fact opportunities. And as we think through what the next 40 years for OLLI means, in partnership with extension and international programs to shape what lifelong learning, continuing education, and really impactful community engagement means for Cal State Fullerton and Orange County, OLLI is going to be an integral part of that. And so for the incoming board members, I really think it's an exciting time. I'd like to thank you for your service, much as I mentioned. I'd like to thank the outgoing board members for their service, because it's a noble endeavor to serve in times like this, and the impact on not only your membership, but the community at large will be, I think, beyond measure, to be quite honest. And it's needed more than ever. As my few minutes with the SBDC, actually the Small Business Development Center this morning pointed out, with all the work they're doing to try to get small businesses back online, they need our help and support just as much as our students and community needs our help and support. And so I think it's, OLLI is just as much a part of that as the Small Business Development Center is, even though you might not think of it in those terms. So I'd like to thank all of you and thank the members, and let you all know that we're in this together, and you can call on me if there's anything I can do to help and support. I know I haven't been able to be in a lot of these meetings. It's been an interesting year for us as we entered the beginning of this academic year with some very difficult news, and then we've dealt with ongoing transition in our unit, and then COVID-19 hit, and we've got senior leadership transition, new Vice President of Student Affairs you've probably seen announced recently, and we're in the middle of a provost search. A third candidate we'll be interacting with this afternoon. There's still the conversation around the campus master plan, right, which continues to move forward. I understand some more information about that should be available soon. And we're all going to be a part of what that new future will hold. And, so I think that the long and short of this for the few minutes I have with you today is just thank you and appreciate your service, and know that you're a part of this larger Titan family, and you should feel proud of all the work that you've done. And I'd really be proud of being members of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. 40 years is an interesting milestone, but let's make sure Osher's strong at the 80-year mark. So thank you, and appreciate all that you've done.
Thank you, Chris.
To borrow from our friends across the pond, keep calm and zoom on.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
That was Chris Ward, our Associate VP of Extension International Programs. And Christina Kim, who plays a major role for us, is our liaison with the EIP, or Extension International Programs. She's going to get here about 10:30 later on, and I'll flash her on when she arrives. If one of you guys who are co-hosting will let me know. And by the way, I want to thank Bill Riley again for co-hosting this, and Jim Monroe, of course, for helping with running all of these shows. So first, I'd like to go through the thank yous and provide some certificates of appreciation. They're all virtual right now, but hopefully when you get back, you'll get some paper copies that are signed by real people. So thank you ahead of time for all of you who are leaving your current board office. First, I'd like to recognize Janice Jang, who's our VP of External Relations. And this is a certificate to thank her for her service. It's been an interesting year, and there's much more to be done, and she's done a great job in maintaining our collaborations with our campus. Thank you, Janice. Next is Chris Shaw, our VP of Communications. And Chris, thank you very much for all the different hats you wear in communication. He's the Chronicle editor, he runs the Blue Book, etc. And of course, he oversees all of our communications, which have become so critical in this time of our shutdown. Next, Jim, you probably didn't think you're going to do this, but Jim Monroe was our interim VP of Technology. And in that short period of time, he's shouldered a lot of responsibilities because of our shutdown. Thank you, Jim, again, for all you do for us. Joanne Hardy is our trustee at large, who will be leaving us after 2 years. And Joanne, it's been a pleasure working with you. And we look forward to having you continue on as our archivist and historian, and you'll bring a very professional component to this job. Thank you very much. We have Linda Lockwood, another trustee at large. Linda has worn, again, many hats in OLLI. She's been our secretary. She's been in charge of the mail service and a advocate for a lot of other groups in OLLI. And I thank you very much, Linda. We have Susan Mullally, who's a new member. She's been a trustee at large for 1 year, and you'll see her back again in another hat. So Susan, thank you very much for your 1 year of service and all the work you've done with Janice Jang in the collaborations with Cal State Fullerton. Finally, this is Bill Sampson, our trustee at large. Bill has been very active in the trips committee, and I've had the pleasure of being on many of his well-organized trips. But Bill, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again in the board. So I think that is the end of our thank you to our outgoing board. I hope I didn't do that too quickly, but I just want to give you a blanket thank you for all of those of you who have been on the board. And now I'd like to turn the program over to Jim Monroe, since I can't install myself. Jim will be in charge of going through and installing our new elected board members.
So thank you, Joyce, and thank you everybody for joining the meeting today. So first up, We will install Joyce Ono as our president. Joyce has been doing a great job this year. So many of you know that the board positions are generally 2 years, but the board president is a 1-year term. And even after the first year, Joyce has agreed to run for a second year term. So we really appreciate that, Joyce, and we are glad to have you back in leadership position. And this will be a challenging year ahead for us. So thank you very much for coming back on the board. We do appreciate it. And then Mike Stover. Mike is not only VP of Administration, but he's been in several of the VP positions in the past. He's also a past president of OLLI, and he hasn't learned after all of this time that he doesn't have to be here at OLLI at 8:30 in the morning. But for Mike, that's pretty easy. But thank you, Mike, for joining us on the board again and continuing your role. Mike is the current VP of Administration. But he is eligible to return to the board for a 2-year term. So thank you, Mike, for joining us again. Now, Ginger Barnhart is our new VP of Communications. Most of you know Ginger if you know OLLI News Bites. You may not necessarily recognize Ginger's name, but you recognize the OLLI News Bites name, and most of those emails go to Ginger. And Ginger is our OLLI News Bites creator, editor, publisher, and she puts out the OLLI News Bites of all of the classes. And we're glad to have Ginger take over this role, VP Communication. I think the job will be in excellent hands. And Ginger, welcome to the board. Susan Mullally, we are glad to have join us as VP of External Relations. Susan has been on the board as a trustee and is now taking over the role of VP of External Relations. She's been active in the collaboration committee and is also active in some of our disaster planning that OLLI is taking on. So we're glad to have her take over a VP role and join us as a leadership position on the board. So thank you, Susan. Bob Newcomb, the new incoming VP of Technology. I am glad to hand over the reins to Bob. Bob has done this job before and has agreed, in spite of that, to take it on again. So Bob, we are very glad to have you join us on the board again. Bob knows many of the players in the university and is certainly very much involved in all of the technology work we are doing at OLLI, which has become so crucial during this time. Thank you, Bob. Renee Cabrera is coming on as a trustee at large. She's actually continuing and taking on a 2-year position. She was appointed to a trustee position, and she's taking on a 2-year position in that. And she has been backing up the VP of Programs and supporting on the curriculum committee. And we're glad to have Renee continue on the board for another 2 years. Vicki Height is joining the board as a trustee at large. Vicki was originally involved in the nomination committee, and then we persuaded her to resign from the nomination committee and take a position as a trustee at large and join the board. So Vicki is well qualified to learn some of the ropes at OLLI. We are very, very glad to have Vicki join us on the board. So thank you, Vicki. And Janice just loves to be on the board. I'm not sure she's a morning person, but she has been on the board for quite a while now, and she's our outgoing VP of External Relations, and she's going to stay involved and stay on the board. Janice is very involved with the overall collaboration activity and has grown that into a major activity with OLLI and the university. So we're glad to have Janice stay on the board, and we hope she stays involved with collaboration and provides her insight and expertise to the board. So thank you, Janice. And then we have Cynthia Owens as a new trustee at large. Cynthia's agreed to step into the board as a new trustee and learn the ropes as a trustee. So representing the membership to OLLI, or to the OLLI membership to the board. So thank you, Cynthia, for joining us on the board, and we hope to see more of you in person eventually.
Okay, so could we now do the motion? Oh, okay, Right now, we'll kind of change gears a little bit to appoint Bill Sampson as a trustee at large. Mike, let's see if I can have the motion. Oh, I'm going to.
I move.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I moved that the board appoint Bill Sampson to the vacancy on the Board of Trustee for the remaining term.
So there's a unanimous motion to accept Bill as an ongoing trustee for another year. Thank you, Bill. He will fill the vacancy that has been left by Susan Mullally.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning. I will actually try to be as brief as the subject matter allows, and I will certainly hit the time parameters. The complete written report will be in the packet or binder you will receive from staff in some format. I don't know if that's going to be a physical format or electronic format, but you'll get the full report that was presented to the board almost 5 years ago for adoption. The long-term plan update was intended to update the 2009 long-term plan, which was our first long-term plan, to provide some direction over a multi-year basis to the organization. The update that we did in 2016 was designed to be focused on critical issues rather than a complete and comprehensive updating of the original document. It adopted a 5-year planning period that we are now entering during this term of the new board. My suggestion, by the way, is when we do this in the future, that we think of a 10-year time frame and with some 5-year and shorter milestones. The update to the long-term plan was accepted in principle. That means the long-term plan in itself is not a binding document, but it is a guiding document. And it's designed to be a reference point each year when the board starts its annual goal-setting process. That's an important point. It is non-binding, but is a guidance document. As the late President and General Dwight Eisenhower pointed out, plans are nothing. Planning is everything. The discipline of planning helps us anticipate issues and plan for them before they become crises. So what were the critical issues we looked at when we put together the plan that is the current 5-year plans? Well, we did a traditional strategic planning analysis. We looked at the organization's strengths and opportunities and weaknesses and threats. And not to go through this line by line, but to give an update, what I think are issues that have improved for the benefit of the organization and those that have declined since we did the original analysis of possible strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In strengths, our occupancy expenses gotten higher, so that was a declining factor, is a factor that is worse than it was before, and primarily because of parking. But we're in a very strong financial status. That overcomes the occupancy expense. In terms of weaknesses, our visibility, thanks to the continuing efforts made by all of you and through our collaboration in addition, the visibility, I think, is very high on campus, particularly at the strategic level, at the president and his cabinet's level. I think it's almost unprecedented over the last, when we look back for 10 or 15 years, how strong we are visible at the strategic level of the organizations. However, our space requirements continue to press us and increase storage requirements as we have classes such as ceramics that are become so robust in attendance and in storage needs. We've had a number of great opportunities we've been able to to seize it through collaborations with the colleges and divisions of the university and through university leadership partnerships. And the change in the UEIP leadership, I think, has been not only on balance to the good, it's to the good. And new members and engagement opportunities through the membership committee and other activities we do to engage our new members, I think, have been much stronger than we were when we started the analysis 5 years ago. Threats keep occurring, but one big threat that is somewhat existential, and that is whether or not we would stay on the physical campus, has improved. That is, the threat has lessened, and I'll just talk briefly about that later. However, outside drivers beyond our control, issues beyond our control, have continued to magnify, and I can just say one: COVID-19. Big external threat beyond our control. You know, the former Secretary of Defense, a man you may or may not admire, Donald Rumsfeld, famously said during the Gulf War, there are known unknowns. There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, there are some things we know we do not know, but there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know. And when we put this plan together, if a global pandemic affecting our ability to present classes in a physical form, we were completely, that was a known unknown. So let's look at some of the plan's significant goals, priorities, or proposed actions. Let's start with some of the critical issues that were identified for this time, involving membership interests, alternative course delivery, managing membership size, recruiting future leaders, maintaining, expanding strategic relationships, seeking additional revenue outside of membership, and assessing major facility needs and opportunities. Those we have were important, but now it's, I think, a new priority, one that was not addressed in the original plan, but I would posit to all the board. It's just surviving COVID-19's impact, keeping OLLI members safe, transitioning the curriculum to the web, making and assessing timely budget modifications, monitoring restrictions that will be placed on us, and the timing for the resumption of on-campus classes. Surviving COVID-19 has to be among the top issues that we address as we go through the planning process for this new board year. Let's talk about membership size for a moment. When we first started this process for the 5-year plan, we were off put by the rapid increase in our membership and the prospect that it would continue to grow, far outstripping our facilities. The long-term plan committee made a recommendation that an arbitrary standard on the maximum membership should not be used, but instead an optimal size standard. We document extensively tipping points and positive factors and negative factors to how is that addressed, and we provided a toolkit for the board on how to address a large membership increase. But here's the issue. That hasn't occurred. That hasn't occurred. We'll talk about a little bit why. And certainly we're looking not at a membership increase in the new year, the new academic year, but perhaps a significant decrease because of the lack of physical classes or the potential that we'll have a limited number of physical classes in the fall semesters. If you look at the trend in membership, you can see that that our new member, we gain in recent years about 350 members a year, down from our peak time in which we were hitting 500 over 2 of the academic years. If you look at the revenue from memberships, or what we call revenue FTEs, or annual member equivalents, based on the material Patsy provided me, we're actually trending down. If you look at unduplicated membership, that is, if you go out and just count the number of members, whether they're a 1 semester member or a 2 semester member or a full year 3 semester member, you can see that we have certainly plateaued. When the plan was put together, we consulted with the Cal State Fullerton unit that is responsible for tracking population trends, and we looked at our age demographic and educational cohort within that age demographic, and we predicted an increase of 1.1% growth in members that just or persons in the service area of the university that would become members. You see, that hasn't transpired. As a matter of fact, if you track what that growth trend that was forecast, we're actually significantly down from the target population growth. So why? Well, I think probably the #1 reason is parking restrictions, parking shortage, and in the past, this past academic year, actual parking restrictions. We also curtailed our outreach marketing, both that what we pay for through publications and ads, but also our emphasis to members on doing word of mouth outreach. But now we have a different issue that we need to look at and need to monitor, and that is, what if we had a significant decrease in membership? What might happen? What might be the revenue impact on OLLI? And I present this only for illustration and not for comprehensive review, but I present this through the scholarship, the sole scholarship of Tom Tobey, who did a quick analysis, a very nice analysis with lots of great assumptions. What would happen if we didn't make up the 300 members we annually lose? We'd lose between 15 and 20% of our members annually. And we have done that for years. People just don't renew their membership. They get other interests, they move on, they're physically incapacitated and can't continue the membership. And we usually completely offset those with new members. What if we didn't offset the 20% trend this year, or only partially? What would happen? Well, actually, we're in a fairly good position if you look at the net operating income of OLLI. I highlighted that with an arrow, that yes, we would go down from a forecast of 47,000 to the good. We would go down to 10,000, 11,000 to the minus. Something to keep in mind. Obviously, when you add in the capital outlays, the impact would still be in deficit, but the real change is in that net operating income. So we talked about at the beginning how one of the concerns we had when we put together this plan was remaining on this campus. Well, as Chris pointed out in his presentation or his discussion earlier today, his welcoming and forecast remarks, that the ongoing campus physical plan is moving forward. They're a little bit behind schedule, and probably for good reason. The environmental documentation still needs to be completed before the system board of trustees would adopt it as a new physical or master physical plan for the campus. But and while there's lots of interesting things in that plan, the removal of the RGC is not. So we remain in the plan without adverse impact. That's excellent news. Excellent news. 7 years ago, we had 2 threats of being either being removed from the campus or consolidated in an academic building, or actually moved over to across the street to where EIP is now headquarters. If you look at the new plan, there's a lot of interesting things that will be going on in the campus. The growth of the residential sector that was, and the arrows, by the way, points to where the RGC is. You can see that the residential area for student dormitories, there are now 2 areas, one on the east side of the campus where it has been, and one on the west side of the campus, and as well as continued growth to the south of the campus. If you look at the phases that the proposed plan is to be implemented, you can see that while there are many phases near us, some of the phase 1 construction demolition, subject to of course getting the revenue to be able to do that, are near us. It's all over campus. We're pretty good shape in that as well. So very good news on the long-term physical plan. One of the emphases in the long-term plan was alternative course delivery, and we got that one right. Matter of fact, the most recent OLLI national newsletter showed that most OLLIs have gone to Zoom for their classes, and are continuing their service to their communities and their memberships through online classes. And we have a robust capability here that we'll hear greater details on in this meeting and other subsequent meetings. An emphasis of the long-term plan was alignment with the university priorities. That has transformed, I think, based upon the crises facing the university at this time. Unprecedented crises. So if I was forecasting what are the university priorities based upon what they're stating at these times, and how, if we're going to become correlated with their priorities, we would look at the health, safety, and economic security of the Cal State community. That is, the students and the faculty and the staff. That we would look at how they are proceeding in the presentation of fall semester classes. We know through the outgoing provost in her response to comments that the university will plan for virtual classes, online classes for the fall semester, but hope for physical classes, and probably will end up with some type of hybrid. That probably is a reasonable expectation. The university is facing tremendous increases in expenditures and revenue losses. This looks like the Great Recession of 2008 on steroids. The governor's office today announced that the state budget forecast is now, instead of having a surplus, is $54.3 billion, $54.3 billion in deficit. And a recent report on the health of the CSU system notes that programs both on the academic side and the non-academic side, such as those provided by EIP and ASC, are particularly hard hit by revenue losses. The university is going to create a new temporary normal, which may be transformed into a new normal. Being aligned with what the university will be doing is significantly important, I think, in this coming year. The university comprehensive fundraising plan, their very ambitious plan, certainly was set back by this crisis. That fundraising plan, with a goal of $200 million, that was already, based upon how they do these campaigns, 46% achieved, had its public phase launch on the same day in which the university started to wind down from physical classes. Had a great start. They raised $240,000 on their kickoff day, and they'll have basically, it's hard even to find that campaign on the university website. That campaign gave us an opportunity to use that resonating environment that the university communications folks will do in the good to raise money for this university. We thought it would be a great opportunity for OLLI to identify some projects that we might seek some additional membership contributions for, such as a prorate of needed Mackey Auditorium improvements, prorate meaning that we pay our share for the time we use it and the university pays their share for the time they use the auditorium, and that we would be able to offset at least a portion of the money for the proposed RGC patio enclosure that would not only provide an area for socialization and coffee, would free up RGCA for classes without disruption, which is long been sought. So so as we develop priorities for this new academic and fiscal year, let me encourage my fellow officers and board members to look at continuing to emphasize, I know this will happen, this is part of our DNA now, alternative course delivery, to maintain and expand our strategic relationships so that we are dancing the same dance the university is dancing in these days, and using opportunities to assess our major facility needs and funding through the university approach to their comprehensive campaign. And finally, I think we should have a de facto additional priority and an overarching priority, surviving the COVID-19 existential threat to OLLI normalcy. One part of that, I think, is to develop a membership stabilization strategy to avoid a crippling revenue hit. Tom's analysis looked at a 20% hit. What if it was more than a 20% hit? And we should keep closely focused on the fall enrollments as they come in to see how they are pacing past years so that we can start anticipating what we need to do, both in terms of expenditure reductions and additional revenue enhancement actions. For example, we might want to consider actually using the fact that so many of our classes will be on Zoom or could remain on Zoom to go after a type of member that particularly like the ability to have online classes that they can participate in. And we might want to consider having a spring or a contingency of a spring 2021 membership marketing and outreach campaign that we can see where we are, can hope that we'll be back in physical classes mainly by 2021, if not before, but any membership loss that we encounter that would have a strategic revenue threat to us, that we try to make up through an effective marketing campaign in the spring semester. So this is what happens next. You take the long-term plan update, both the written document and this overview, and try to transmit it into focus areas and into actual priorities. And Joyce will lead us through that. And look at what can be done, what should be done in this coming academic year. By anticipating priorities that are strategic, we're able to pull ourselves now out of just focusing in on how things have been done in the past. There's enough for every officer to just do what we've done in the past. But these are such extraordinary times. I encourage all the officers to consider looking at these strategic priorities and perhaps others, and discovering in their areas of operation what might be done to enhance our ability to move ahead and be the type of organization we joined, a fun organization, an intellectually engaging organization, one in which we meet a lot of new friends. And whatever we choose, we can have any goal that we want, but as one of our members pointed out in this chart, that implementation is the important part. You can have as many goals as you like, but if you have poor implementation, you haven't moved ahead at all.
Christina is our liaison with EIP, and a very important person in what's going on between EIP and OLLI. So welcome, Christina. I just wanted to have everybody know who you are and see who you are.
Good morning. I apologize for the late entry to your meeting. I was actually meeting with Lauren Sieben over in University Advancement, and we did discuss a little bit about OLLI in terms of, you know, possible future philanthropic endeavors. And so just wanted to let you know that that's where I was coming from.
Okay, thank you very much for your patience here. Well, following Mike is a really bad organizational scheme here on my part. Thank you, Mike, for a very well-organized and comprehensive presentation of the long-term plans. And I hope to those of you who are new to the board that this really helps you orient you to the kind of things that we're going to be happy doing in the coming year. And those of you who are new to your office, I'm going to go through some of the kinds of planning that was done back in July of last year and give you a status of where we are and hopefully an update of where we're going in some cases. And this is going to be the basis for the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about in our meeting on May 21st, where we'll focus on our goals for the coming year, and hopefully you'll be able to come up with the kinds of goals that are going to be necessary for this unprecedented coming year and circumstance. So in the past year, 2019 and 2020, we focused on 4 of the long-term goal categories that Mike had presented to you earlier. And I have here the 4 major goals that we were focused on, actually the 5 that we had from the long-term plan, which we used as a guide. And we tabled the grants at that time because until we had more specific needs identified. And you see in each of these goals that we have the officers that were in charge of these various areas. And so number 1, we focused on membership, our enrollment, our leadership recruitment, and evolving interests of our membership. And these were going to be for membership, programs, and hospitality. In our second goal, we were focused on the facility, the Ruby Gerontology Center, and the kind of capital fundraising that would be needed to make any kinds of renovations and changes. And as you can see, facilities, our treasurer, the chair of the Development Philanthropy Committee, which is Jim Monroe, and the VP Administration were involved. The third was the alternative course delivery, and as you can see, and at that time, it was in light of the parking issues that we were facing, and the VP of Technology initially was involved there, and as you see now, once we got the technology on board, our beleaguered VP of Programs is now taking over the kind of programs that we're going to be delivering in alternative methods. And number 5 was our strategic relationships with Cal State Fullerton. At the time that we started, Cal State Fullerton had just completed a new 5-year plan. And so we wanted to make sure that we were in step with their new strategic plan. And that fell on the shoulders of our external relations VP and our communications people. So this is sort of the overall plan that we had at the start of this past fiscal year. So let me just go through some of these. The membership plan was, one was to assess whether OLLI remains optimally sized, as Mike had pointed out, for its mission of lifelong learning. And for the most part, what we did was we did not advertise for or market OLLI. And that kind of kept our membership at a fairly no growth phase. And it was in keeping with our issues with parking and the number of classes we had and the spaces that we had. So we were going to review this in the coming year. And by April, which was last month, where we stopped having OLLI meetings and the influx of the impact of the COVID-19, we are having to change our plans. So right now, these plans have been altered by the COVID-19 epidemic. And so as Mike had pointed out, we're probably going to have to do aggressive marketing of OLLI. And this is going to be the possibility that we'll have a significant drop in OLLI membership, a full membership, starting in fall 2020. Our online registration will begin in July, the middle of July. And so one of the things that I learned from attending a recent national OLLI discussion about preparing for fall was many of them, and I think it's a good idea, that we will do a survey of our membership, a quick survey before July, just to get an idea of what their plans are to whether they're going to renew or not. And at the same time, to try to promote OLLI membership in the coming year by word of mouth. Because as you know, from all of our studies in the past of trying to find out what was our best marketing strategy, word of mouth has always been the best way for marketing OLLI. Another thing that we were trying to do was to recruit more leadership into OLLI. And there's a critical need, as you can see, even in our current board, we were kind of recycling a lot of our bodies here. And so again, it falls on the shoulder of membership to try to identify new trustees that might come into our OLLI board. And we tried to do this before the nomination committee met in November, and to inform the nominations committee of some additional people from OLLI that could serve on the board. So we're going to have to follow up on these. Again, this is something that got waylaid by the virus later on, and we still need to develop this list of potential leadership candidates. And that'll be one of the things that I think, even though we have this impacted situation with the virus, this is something that still needs to go on. The other other goal that we had was trying to identify if our members are satisfied with our OLLI programs, and looking at the evolving membership interest. And this fell on both the VP of Programs and a VP of Membership. And we were going to do this by looking at members' interests by looking at class attendance and looking at this data by the end of January. I think maybe Ellie will have some things to say about this later on. We also were planning to do a member survey sometime starting to work on this in mid-March. But as you can see, we were also waylaid by our current situation with the virus. And currently, what we need to do is probably evaluate OLLI's programs presented virtually that we're doing now, and plan for how we're going to return to normalcy. As Mike had pointed out, if we do this in stages, it's going to require some planning of what classes will be allowed to come back and under what kind of situation they'll be able to come back. Another goal we had was to assure OLLI's future on campus through capital fundraising. As Mike had pointed out, the university has a major fundraising drive, and one of the goals that was set out by Jim Monroe's Development and Philanthropy Committee was to increase the number of members donating from 9% to 12% at the end of the fiscal year, and also to participate in the Cal State Fullerton's comprehensive campaign, which was sort of waylaid on the same day that we were supposed to hold our 40th anniversary event, March 12th. Cal State Fullerton had also launched their Titan Day of Giving fundraising event. Nevertheless, OLLI members still, in that one day's time, donated about $7,000 to our funds. And the goal for to analyze the need and scope, feasibility, and timing of our major capital construction, we decided that we would be focusing on capital construction for our philanthropy and donations drive. And this falls on the shoulders of VP of Facilities, Pete Saputo. Earlier this year, the OLLI board approved to spend $20,000 for plans to renovate the Shapiro patio by enclosing it to be usable all year round. As Mike pointed out, this would allow greater use of the Shapiro AB, which is oftentimes impacted by having members coming in for coffee breaks or having dining there in the back of the room, and it sort of curtailed the entire use of that room. Mackey Auditorium, the audiovisual upgrade, it's the one last facility we have in Ruby Gerontology where we have upgraded all the other rooms but this one. And in this case, this is also, this facility, the Mackey, is shared by the university, as you know. We only have it for 2 days in the week, and it's not quite up there on the schedule for facility upgrades. And so we were having to wait for decisions on that before we incur any more expenses on doing this. So the status right now is for these renovation plans is there are ongoing discussions. We had a meeting on Monday, in fact, with Cal State Fullerton's facilities and the architects that are on a patio plan design, and Pete's group is planning ahead to finalize some of the design plans. The other goal that we had was remote access to selected OLLI classes and programs. As you know, we have far exceeded what we had planned to do at the start of the year. We had done this mainly to mitigate our parking issues, and we had OLLI, the board had approved purchasing equipment and support services. We hired some students to help with our distance learning program, and we were going to then determine what interest and demand there was among OLLI members. Of course, now this is the only game in town, so we have quickly transformed OLLI's program to a virtual program. Again, thanks to our technology folks, Jim Monroe, Bob Newcomb, and Don Lake, who's in the chair of our distance learning committee. The strategic relationships and increasing diversity of OLLI members was the goal for our external relations VP at that time. And she had set forth strengthening and expanding the mentoring program participation by 20% at the end of 2020. We still haven't gotten to that yet. And it's one of the goals that we might have, although they'll be impacted by the fact that at least for a little while, this will all have to be done virtually with students. We also wanted to expand collaboration opportunities into various departments at Cal State Fullerton by 20%. And so far we have made collaborations with all 8 Cal State Fullerton schools. Janice had also had a diversity plan to update the number of people that are that would reflect the diversity of our surrounding community. And the plan was to check to see again, as we start our new strategic planning in 2021, to compare OLLI's diversity with that of our surrounding community. And we will, again, collaborate with Cal State Fullerton to network and build relationships to improve our OLLI diversity. But I think in reality, what we need to do at this time is maintain what Janice has been doing, educate our members to do this, and also the fact that in time, as the population evolves and we bring in more of the boomer crowd, I guess, we will start seeing changes in our diversity. So the status for this strategic relationship plan is that we will need to increase OLLI member participation. And I hope those of you who are in the audience who have not served as a mentor will take up this challenge in the coming year. We will continue our diversity education program at OLLI, but we will also need to reestablish our outreach and marketing to mitigate the potential decrease we expect in OLLI membership in the coming year. Now, OLLI Communications, which is headed by Chris Shaw, has been critical, especially in this current climate. And Chris has done a lot to have his group support the diversity plan by promoting what Janice was doing. And he did this by increasing the diversity in our publications in terms of who was featured on the covers, et cetera, and in our Facebook posts. He's also utilized technology for improving our communication to members. And as you know, Jim Senemy started our new Facebook page, and we're trying to maintain it. And Janice Jeng is doing it right now, and Janice and Mary Sampson. We are trying to see if we can distribute the Blue Books digitally and encourage use of online resources instead of paper. And our OLLI News Bites has been streamlined by using hyperlinks instead of listing and writing everything on there. We're now making it easier to navigate. And as you can see by Ginger being on the board, Chris has done a good job at recruiting leaders and training others to do the communications job. And as I mentioned earlier, communications is playing a critical role during our pandemic shutdown because all of our communications have to be electronic for people to be able to access our Zoom delivered classes. So we're doing this through the OLLI News Bites by making sure that only our members are getting these links, and through our OLLI website. And many of our members are going to have to change and remember their online username and password in order to access the classes on the OLLI website. So a lot of things are going to be put in place for OLLI to continue that will also require changes in our membership attitudes and skills.
First, I wanted to basically let everyone know where we stand in terms of classes. Out of the original classes, let's say we had 42 classes that were scheduled for all of the arts. We currently are going to be running 23. Out of the 8 for language, we're currently running 4. Out of the 6 for ACON, because so many people stepped up, we're actually going to increase it to 7. Science is actually also increasing by 1. They were at 5 classes. We're now going to offer 6. The special interests group, there was 11. We're offering 4. In healthy living, when we first started, nobody wanted to do anything as far as Zooming in healthy living. We now have 4 participants in there. And then we also have a number of other socials that are going to be planned. There's several socials that are in the work right now for to invite our members to enjoy a lot of music, a lot of games, that kind of stuff. And I intend to do, for the 4th of July, I'm going to run the presentation that I run for the veterans recognition. So that's some of the stuff that's going on, and it's constantly changing.
So at this point, I'd like to adjourn this session. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I really appreciate the support that the OLLI members who are not on the board have shown us.